Dre Day Videos presenting to you Rob Murr's testimony, where he shares his experience with heartache.
Kind of crushed me, man. They told me I couldn't be a part of it, so I walked home crying.
Living a life in chaos.
And we ended up shooting up his house, not even knowing if his kids were in there.
And a deliverance.
And I wake up and I read his word and I pray and I put on the whole armor of God.
Thank you for tuning into Dre Day Videos.
He never leaves us nor forsakes us. Even when we think he's not there, he's there, man. My name's Rob Murrs, man. I'm 41 years old. I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio. When I was 5 years old, I went to Ohio Avenue Elementary in the south end of Columbus, man, and I struggled with racism and you know, kids jumping me and my brother, you know, on our way to school. But the way God works is two of my friends, they were black. They moved across the street from me and they would walk me and my brother to school every day and protect us so we wouldn't get jumped, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how God works. And the church that I grew up in was right across the street from my childhood home on Stanley and 17th in the south end of Columbus. As I got older, man, my mom moved us from there to Commercial Point, Ohio. My brother was always into sports and always a part of something, man, so I always felt like I wanted to be a part of something, so I tried out for Boy Scouts, and my dad was a bad alcoholic, and my mom was in church, and you know, my mom would be working or going to church and my dad would be at home laid up drunk. So I would never have a ride to get to my Boy Scout meetings, so I would walk. And you know, I remember walking there and I was late all the time, and they were like, you know, if you can't show up on time, then you can't be a part of this. And you know, that was a day that like kind of crushed me, man. They told me I couldn't be a part of it, so I walked home crying, because my dad was always drunk and would never take me or do those activities with me. So, you know, that kind of crushed me at an early age. And like I said, my brother was into sports, so I always wanted to be a part of something, man. So, you know, I got with an older crowd. I got with a bunch of dudes that were in high school, man, and I was in elementary, you know, getting ready to go into middle school. And for me to feel a part of, man, I started, you know, hanging out with them and started smoking weed and thinking I was the cool kid, and, you know, parties on the weekends and, you know, social drinking on the weekends, and that eventually turned into every weekend parties, man, and just, you know, getting high with my buddies and running around and smoking weed and drinking and just thinking I was cool and feeling like I was a part of something. 15, 16 years old, I started out in asphalt for my uncle. He owned a blacktop company in Columbus, and I was around a lot of older guys. I was around my cousins and them, and you know, they were into heavier things, man. I think that was probably the first time that I was introduced to cocaine, man, powdered cocaine, because my cousin was selling it. And you know, I was kind of selling weed and working too, so I was like kind of addicted to fast money. And you know, I was addicted to material things, like I had nice cars, nice clothes. I was always flashy, man. I had my son when I was 16 years old. You know, I was pretty much a kid myself. That's when my addiction started to progress, you know what I mean? I was introduced to cocaine, you know, my cousin was selling it, I was helping him sell it. Started using it. It kind of took a hold of me and took me down a path, like a dark path, man. You know, I was always staying up all hours of the night, late for work, partying at work, on the job, you know what I'm saying? As that progressed, you know, I was partying with my cousin one night, and he was selling coke then, and at this time, you know, we were doing more than we were selling. We were using more than we were selling, and we were shooting pool in the basement of his house, and he was like, "You ever tried crack?" And I'm like, "Nah, man." And I was buzzing, you know, I was already drunk, like, and kind of like couldn't be focused. But you know, once I smoked crack and I hit that crack for the first time, it was like boom, like I wasn't drunk. Like I could drink all night long and not get drunk and still feel like I was focused and, you know, focused and tuned in. But honestly, it was really the point where it kind of took a hold of my life, man, and took me down a dark path. I did that for a year and a half, man. I smoked crack for a year and a half. It was like consumed me. It consumed my everyday life. I had a nice house in Grove City with my son's mom at the time. We had 2 nice cars. We had a nice apartment in Grove City. Had a good job. Ended up losing my apartment. Lost both of my cars. Almost lost my job. Me and my son and my son's mom ended up having to move back to the west side of Columbus, from Grove City to the west side. I was trying to get my life together, you know what I mean? I had some clean time. I got off the crack and I was doing good, and making money, and then, you know, once I started making money again, something clicked in me, man, and, you know, the drugs consumed me again. I was sneaking around, smoking crack, and doing it behind my girl's back. You know, I can remember nights of me being in the south end of Columbus over on Parsons and Barthman, man. It's a bad area. It's a drug area. It's known for drugs and violence, and you know, I'd be over there all hours of the night, you know, spending my money, spending my whole check, man, smoking crack. I can remember a time too when I was partying and I was high, and I had money on me, and I had my son with me, and he was 2 years old at the time, man, and we were in my truck, and I said, Daddy's got to run over here and pay somebody some money, and I want you to sit right here. And I left my son in the car, man, in a drug-infested neighborhood, while I ran across the street to the park to meet a dope girl at the time, and buy crack, and then jump in the car. And then my son looks at me and says, Daddy, did you pay him the money you owed him? And I'm like, yeah, you know, steady lying to my son, man. And that's just kind of the dark places that crack took me to, man. Eventually I kind of got clean off of that, man. I had probably 5 to 10 years of dry time off of crack cocaine. I had a major surgery done. I kept having a pain on my side, and they went in and did a laparoscopy where they put a scope in you. And that's kind of where I was introduced to prescription pain pills. When I ran out of my prescription, I started buying them off the streets, and you know, that took me down a dark path, man. I was strung out on pain pills for, I don't know, probably a good 10 years. This is in my early 20s. Even though I was high and doing the things that I was doing, man, like, I still enjoyed that time with my son. Like, you know, there was nights we would fall asleep in his room together, man, just talking and playing video games, man. And we were really close, even when he was younger, man. We had a special bond, I guess you could say, man. As I got a little bit older and more into the pills, man, like, that kind of wasn't doing it for me, I guess you could say. And I was dating this girl at the time, and she was like, have you ever tried heroin? And I'm like, no. She's like, well, it's cheaper than the pills, and it lasts longer. So that's kind of where my heroin addiction came in. So, you know, I was just living a chaotic lifestyle, man. I would have to go get drugs not only for myself to get well, but I'd always have to get drugs for her. And then, you know, that lifestyle kind of consumed us, man. We were always arguing over money. We wasn't paying our rent, you know, we wasn't paying bills. The landlord's beating the door down. The first time that I ever did drugs with my son, you know, me and my mom and my son had an apartment in Grove City, and me and my son tried pills together for the first time, man, and I think that's when, you know, the pills got a hold of him, and that lifestyle got a hold of him. And, you know, as a father, I'm thinking, like, you know, I was being more of a friend than I was a father. So I'm like, you know, if he's going to do it with anybody, I would rather him do it with me. And if something happens to him, I'd rather him be in my presence than somebody else that's just going to leave him there if something was to happen to him. So that's kind of where my mind went, man, as far as the, you know, addiction and doing drugs with my son. As long as I numbed the pain of, you know, things that happened to me in my childhood, you know, the things that I did to my son, like not being there at his birth, you know, doing drugs with him when he was younger up till, you know, recently. I think I was just trying to cover up and numb that pain, man, from my past and from my present life. And that's what I felt like my life was always going to be, man, was a drug addict. But I knew kind of deep down that God had a purpose and a plan for me because I was raised in a church. I remember just times of, you know, us living together and arguing with each other over money and over drugs until, you know, over being sick, man, until we would get drugs in us, and then it was like everything would go back to normal and everything would be okay. But in my heart, my mind, it killed me to even argue with my son or have to threaten him, man, you know, because as a father, I don't think you ever want to threaten your kids, man, or threaten to fight your kids, or, you know, but in my heart and my mind, I would never put my hands on my son, though, you know what I mean? And I would tell him that, like, you know, I would never hurt you, son, I'd never put my hands on you, but, you know, my choices and my actions said otherwise, you know what I mean? So I'm sure that probably took a toll on him, too. You know, I remember my cousin called me one time and said, you know, hey, cuzzo, somebody's shooting at my house, you know. Makayla was in the house, which is my cousin's daughter, and she was a baby at the time. And when I went to his house, you know, I took a pistol with me, and I remember going upstairs in the bedroom and seeing 2 bullet holes, and her mattress was on the floor, like right there, but she wasn't at home at the time. She was at his girl's mom's. So that kind of like lit a fire under me, man. Like, I was thinking like, well, how could somebody shoot up my cousin's house and, you know, not even know his babies was in there? But then again, you know, my cousin calls me for help and I turn around and go do the same thing. And, you know, he had beef with the guy across the street and we ended up shooting up his house, not even knowing if his kids were in there. That's when I was at the deepest, darkest part of my addiction, man, is when I did heroin and crack, man. And my son was doing it with me. And, you know, that's something I did for 10 years plus, man. I was a drug addict for 28 years total, man, from the time I was, you know, 13, 14 years old up till 2 years ago, you know, when I got into recovery. You know, this is where the drugs led me and my son. He lived with me and my mom and my aunt at the time, and, you know, we would be sick, man, and I remember my son being sick and crying and you know, me feeling bad and feeling sick and feeling sorry for my son because I felt like, you know, I was a part of that pain, man, you know, him being dope sick. And I remember, you know, robbing my mom and my aunt and stealing money from them and stealing some stuff and selling it and going to Columbus and just to help me and my son get well, man, so he didn't have to experience that pain and to numb that pain. Really broke my heart, man, to do that. I had a good home, man. My mom and him was good to me. You know, I worked when I could, when I wasn't sick, and when I would come home, my mom and them would always have dinner cooked, man. I came from a good household, man, and for me to take from them and steal from them, and, you know, I've lied to them and manipulated them, and I can remember riding on the highway on 70 East to go get one of my dope boys and take his girl to get some food for their kids. And I could remember saying, you know what, God, I feel like running this car off the freeway, man, and just ending it all, man. And, you know, I just want to end my life, man. And you know, that small, still voice would, you know, there was something in me, something would click, and I knew it was God telling me not to do it, man. And I'd always pray like, God, I know this is not the purpose and the plan that you have for me. And I lived in a Pilot gas station for 6 months in my car, and my son would come stay with me in my car just to see me, just to spend time with me, because, you know, nobody would hear from me for a couple of weeks or a few days, man. So my son would find me and we'd be in the car in tears, man, crying and saying, you know, he'd be like, Dad, this ain't the life that God's chose for us, man. This is not the life that he has for us. I know he has something better for us. I just want you to get better, man. I just want to see you better, man. I always feel like, you know, God was always with me, man, and he was always with my son. Even in my darkest times of living in my car and not knowing where to go from here, like, Lord, where do I go from here? What do I do, man? You know, is this what my life is going to be? Is this the rest of my life? Am I just going to be a homeless, hopeless drug addict that has no heart and, you know, walking with the dead spirit, man, just out here existing, man? But, you know, glory to God, man, that wasn't what my life was meant to be, man. The first time that I was introduced to God and that I really knew God was tugging on my heart is like back when I was so consumed by pills, and my son's mom didn't want no more to do with me, and she said something's got to give, so I ended up going and staying with my mom. And I remember having 1 Suboxone left, man, and I remember my mom saying, just go to church with me. And I went to church with my mom, and they played this song. I can't remember what the song was. And the tears just started to fall. And I said, God, you know, if you're real, man, you know, just come into my heart right now. I have 1 Suboxone left, and I don't want to be dependent on drugs. I don't want to be dope sick when I wake up in the morning. And my aunt was like, you know, it's time. You need to go to the altar. You need to, you know, lay it at the feet of Jesus and give it all to God. And I remember walking up there, and, you know, I remember like feeling this peace about me, man. And that night I went home and I went to bed, and I woke up the next day, and the only way I could describe it, man, is like hitting the lottery, dude. I felt like $1 million, like God had fully delivered me. Like I wasn't dope sick, like I didn't have no Suboxone, I didn't have anything to get me well. So it was like God was there for me, man. And I went on to serving, man, for like 3 years. I did really good. I stayed down here in Chillicothe, where I'm at now, for a year, from 2017 to, you know, the beginning of 2018, and I got into recovery, and I got into outpatient at Recovery Council and got introduced into recovery, and I was doing good, and I was doing groups. I met Pastor Gray. He's big in the recovery community down here. I met ACM, Another Chance Ministries, and it was kind of like God was opening up that door back then, you know, for me to walk through, and for my son to be introduced to Christ and to recovery. But you know, 7 months into my outpatient treatment, I kind of rushed back to work, man, and me and my son, I had him move down here, and I was like, look, man, come down here, let's get clean together, dude, let's do this thing. And you know, I had like 7 months in, my son had 5 months, and by this time we had done met Pastor Gray. I was doing groups with ACM. We were going to their nightly wrap-ups and doing wrap-ups with them, and you know, sharing the pain and just praying with them, man. And I think that was God planting seeds, you know, in me and into my son. Once I started to stray away from God and stray away from the church and that relationship with God, that's when things started to fall apart. Me and my son went back to work. Money was a trigger for me back then. Me and my son was making $20 an hour. My son was making $18 an hour, and he's like 18, 19, 20 years old. I'm 32 or so, you know what I mean? Maybe a little bit older. And then we, you know, made a decision to get high one day, man, and it consumed us again, man. And I walked away from God. I walked away from recovery. I went on a 5-6 month roller coaster ride through the chaos, man, through the addiction. I drugged my son to it again. I could tell something was like different in him, man. Like I could tell it was really weighing on his heart this time, heavy, more than it had in the past. He was like, Dad, you know, I really want to get clean. I really want to change my life. And he said, I think you should too. And I want you to change your life, man. And at this time, like I kind of felt like it was maybe God using him to tell me this, man, you know. And in 2018, I was in court in downtown Columbus, man. I was going to see my probation officer, and I remember looking over, man, and seeing my son on the phone, frantically calling, man, trying to get into treatment, man, calling everywhere. And I just remember looking at him, and I could see the pain, and I could feel the pain, man. But you know, I could also see the love in him, and I could feel the love, you know, that he had, and what his intentions were. That day, he got accepted to a treatment center in Florida. He went home and got all of his stuff packed, and he was going through some things, and he gave me his earrings that he always wore, and he said, here, Dad, I want you to have these, man. I'm gonna go back to Columbus. I'm gonna take this flight. And his mom come and picked him up, and he went back to Columbus. He got on a flight, man, and went to a treatment center in Florida. It was a 45-day treatment center. The next day, when he was flying out to Florida, I made the decision to call Recovery Council. She gave me some resources, and I ended up going to Southern Ohio Medical Center. It was the Breakthrough Program, and I went there to detox. I told myself, and I told God, I said, you know, God, if you want me to do this, if you want me to change my life, and this is the plan that you have for me, then, you know, I don't want to be dependent on anything when I leave here. So, you know, I went there and I got winged off to Suboxone, and I went back home and I did outpatient for 2 weeks, man. And, you know, it was going good, but, you know, me and my counselor was in a one-on-one session. She said, you know, Rob, I think you should do inpatient, because in the past, you know, outpatient didn't work for you and you relapsed and you went back to that lifestyle. Something in me was telling me, go do this, you need to do this. She said, if you want to do this, if you're serious about this, be here Monday with your bags packed. And that Monday I came in and I had my bags packed, man. And you know, during all this process, you know, me and my son had phone conversations. Even when I was in Breakthrough detoxing, when I was in Foundations, we would have phone conversations, and he would tell me how he was doing and how treatment was going in Florida, and I would tell him how I was doing. And you know, it just excited, man, about recovery. And you know, we were excited about changing our lives. You know, I told him, I was like, I'm going to inpatient treatment, dude. I won't have my phone for like 2 weeks. It's a stabilization thing. You don't get your phone for 2 weeks. A week and 3 days in or 4 days in inpatient treatment, I remember my counselors coming back to my room to get me, and they said they needed to talk to me. And I'm thinking, like, you know, what did I do? I'm trying to replay my whole day in my mind, like what happened? Did I do something wrong? Did I, you know? They take me to this back room, and I open the door, and I remember my aunt and my uncle sitting there, the ones that own the church up the street. And I remember them having a blank expression on their face. And I remember them telling me, like, At first I thought it was something to do with my mom. She said, sit down, baby, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, and I'm freaking out, and the tears is already starting to flow. And I was told that night, you know, that my son had passed away from an overdose. And the last time that I had talked to him, he was doing really good. But for some apparent reason, he made a decision to try cocaine, and it was laced with so much fentanyl that, you know, it just shut him down. And my son overdosed and passed away from addiction, man, from drug addiction. I remember being so heartbroken and feeling so lost. And I remember in the past telling God, like, you know, I could never picture my life without my son. And then I remember my aunt praying for me. And then once my aunt prayed for me, I remember this peace, this like overwhelming peace fall upon me. And I knew it was God. And I told him, like, you know, that night I said, Lord, if this is you, you know, you're gonna have to give me a sign, man. And he spoke to me, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. And I really stuck to that word, man, that the word that the Lord gave to me. And I knew instead of me leaving like I did in the past and run from the pain and numb the pain with the drugs and go back to that chaotic lifestyle that I was living, I just remembered that it was like God was telling me, just stay here and finish what you and little Rob started. Stay here and fulfill the plans that I have for your life. I finished 4 months there, and I left there, and lo and behold, you know, they had applications for transitional, and they're like, you know, you should think about transitional after. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I want to further my recovery. I just feel like 4 months is not enough, you know what I mean? So, and lo and behold, man, Alec Wiggins, one of the guys from ACM that I knew from 2017, he was in the program. He was an RA now, and he comes and picks up one of the guys that was going to ACM, and he was like, hey, you know, Pastor Gray and him told me that, you know, you're a part of the family, you're a part of ACM, you're already accepted. Once you finish here, man, you're coming to transition and you're accepted into ACM, Another Chance Ministries. And I was like, that's cool, man. And you know, I graduated, and Brother Timmy Stacy came and picked me up, man, and I went from Ed's Place to Another Chance Ministries, man. You know, kind of walking through a door that God had opened, you know, a couple years earlier in 2017 when me and my son met him. You know, me and my son was like a part of ACM. We did wrap-ups with him. We prayed with him. We went to church at Zion Baptist Church. My son gave his heart to the Lord at Overcomers Night, man. And now here I am, you know, a couple years later, walking through that door, fulfilling the plans that God had for my life, and building my relationship with Christ, man. Like, I always knew God, and I knew God was real, and I felt like, you know, God had a purpose and a calling on my life, but I was always running from it, man. Like, you know, like I was always deceived by the lies and the darkness of drugs and my sins, man, and that chaotic lifestyle that I ran from it. And instead of, you know, running to God, I was running to the chaos. But, you know, today, man, I don't run from him, I run to him, you know what I mean? Like in his word, it talks about abiding under the shadow of the Almighty. So today I abide under him, man, and his shadow, his wing, man, his protection, his peace, his joy. And that gave me the motivation and determination, you know, even in treatment, to go on and do what my son and I had talked about doing, and fulfill the purpose and the plans that God had for my life. And today I'm living it, man. I went to ACM, I did 9 months there. This is how God works. You know, I did 9 months, and I ended up graduating in January 19th of 2020, I'm sorry. My son passed away on January 19th, 2019. So a year after my son's passing, I graduated on his year anniversary. So I kind of felt like that was God letting me know that my son was with me, and letting me know that, you know, I'm walking in my purpose and my plan and my calling that God had for me. You know, me and my dude, Brother Matt, which I went through the program with him, God's opened up the door for us to do a show called From the Cuffs to the Cross, you know, because God's brought us from the handcuffs to the cross, and used all that pain and all the suffering and all the struggles, even losing my son, dude. He used that for his glory, man. In the darkness, you know, we always say, you know, God, why do we go through this? Or God, why would you put me through this? But in all reality, it's not God. God gives us free will. It's us who puts ourselves through that. It's us who puts ourselves through that pain and misery. But I feel like God keeps us in those moments of that trial and tribulation, so we can learn and grow from it, man, and share that part of our life and share how God was with us, you know, even in the darkest places of our life. But yeah, man, I got a good job. I have a fiance. I have my own place. I have a show we do every Tuesday night, From the Cuffs to the Cross, man. I'm honored to do that. I'm honored to speak about recovery, speak about my past, speak God's word, most importantly, man, and share the love of God, share the gospel with people, man. But yeah, this year, man, it's been amazing, dude. Actually, December 30th, this year, I'll have 2 years clean and sober, man, by the grace of God. And I know every day I only have today, man, so I wake up and I take advantage of that day, and I wake up and I read His Word and I pray and I put on the whole armor of God. And I just let His Spirit and let Him lead and guide me, man, and lead and guide me through my life right now. My testimonies help people, and I pray that it continues to help people, man, and I pray that I'm a light and a blessing to people, man, and I just want to remain humble, man, and focused and teachable, you know, in God and the things that He has for me and life in general, man. If you're struggling, man, I would say, you know, reach out to God first and foremost. Pray without cease, man. Even in my darkest times when I didn't think God heard my prayers, like He heard my prayers, man. You know, I just feel like just seek God, and then God will send you to the resources you need, man, and reach out and be honest. Get honest with yourself, man. Get honest and let yourself know that you have a problem, and, you know, just be open-minded to new things, man. Open-minded to Christ, man, you know what I mean? It's about connection, man. Being connected to the main power source, and God is the main power source, and Jesus Christ is the main power source, and being connected to Him connects us to everything we need, man. It connects us to the resources, connects us to detox, treatment, to church, man, to like-minded people, or people that will push you to greatness, man. You know, just ask for help, man. If you're struggling, man, struggling with addiction, with suicide, anything, man, like I've seen God deliver people, man. I've seen God change lives, man. I've seen God take people from the darkest of places, man, and set them in the light, man, and, you know, use their stories for His glory, man. Like, just reach out, man. That would be my biggest thing, man. Don't let your negative thoughts or your guilt and your shame consume you, man, because God is a forgiving God. He's a loving God, man. You know, there's times in my life that things that I probably left out of my testimony that I can think about that, you know, that I never thought I could be forgiven for. Again, like I said, man, my name's Rob Mers on Facebook. I want to send a shout out to you know, Dre, first and foremost, for shooting my testimony. Send a shout out to ACM, Pastor Gray, God's House, my Aunt Gail, my mom, you know, all the faithful people, all the intercession prayers, man, that's been there for me. Shout out to the Cuffs to the Cross, man. If you guys want to learn about, you know, Jesus and salvation and the gospel and the good news and learn about a little bit of recovery, man, and what we're doing, man, you know, just hit me up on Facebook or hit up my dude, Brother Matthew Chafin, man. We'll send you an invite from the Cuffs to the Cross. You know, just start watching the show, man. Just a shout out to everybody that's supported me, man. Shout out to God first and foremost, man, for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. And, you know, He gave me those moments to just push me through it, because just like His word says, man, He never leaves us nor forsakes us. Even when we think He's not there, He's there, man. So, and shout out to my mom for never giving up on me, man, and for always loving me, even through my addiction, even through my dark places, and, you know, loving me until I could love myself, man. Thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for tuning in, man. I appreciate y'all, man. To God be the glory, man. Don't give up. Keep pushing forward. Reach out to God, man. Seek God, pray. Reach out to resources, man. I love y'all. God bless y'all, man. Thank you for watching my testimony.